Good afternoon. Would you please state and spell your last name for the jury?
Barbara Toth, Toth.
Do you have a nickname, Mrs. Todd?
I do. A lot of people call me Bunny.
Now, what do you do for work?
Oh, well, so I mainly volunteer at the All Children's Hospital. I help to run the gift shop.
And why don't you work?
Well, I really like volunteering. I love helping children and their families, and it just keeps me busy throughout the week.
I love that. Where do you live?
So I live on Camelot Lane, 506 Camelot Lane in Bristow, right here in Lone Star.
Who do you live with?
I live with my husband, Dr. Kevin Toth, and my 2 children.
Your husband, where does he work?
He works at the hospital, the same hospital that I volunteer at.
How would you describe the neighborhood you live in?
It's a really nice neighborhood. All of the houses are really nice. Lots of young families live around there. We're all pretty good friends. It's very safe, generally very quiet.
And who are your neighbors?
Well, we have many neighbors. The Smiths, we have the Joneses, the Elazers, the Foxes, the Williams.
How long have you known the Elazers?
The Elazers, we've known them really for many years. They've been our neighbors. Jordan works with Kevin at the hospital.
How would you describe your relationship with Dr. Elazer?
Well, we used to be very close, and now they're pretty much strangers. Now we just live next to each other.
How far
We used to be friends.
How far is Dr. Elazer's house to yours?
Oh, they're right next door. Our yards abut next to each other. They touch. So I don't know, maybe 30, 40 feet.
How blocked is your view into Dr. Elazer's house?
Into their house. So we do have some like shrubs and bushes, and there's a couple of trees that separate the 2 lots. So all of the houses on Camelot Lane are pretty private that way. And because we have that shared yard space, there's trees and bushes in the way.
Mrs. Toth, I want to draw your attention to the early morning hours of Saturday, November 28, 1998. Where were you?
I was at home. I was in bed asleep.
Who was at the house with you?
Well, our children were at their grandparents' house, my parents' house, and Kevin was working most of the night, but he came home late, so it was just the 2 of us in the house.
Now, what happened around 1:30 a.m.?
Well, my husband came home. He came into the bedroom, and I woke up.
Why did he go into your bedroom?
Well, he said that he and Jordan, our next door neighbors, that they were going to catch the vandals that had been ruining all the mailboxes in the neighborhood.
Who are the vandals?
So for like a few weeks at that point, over the weekends in the morning, there were these people that were just like coming through the neighborhood, and they were smashing our mailboxes. And we have an HOA ordinance where we have to have an active mailbox at all times. So they would smash the mailboxes, and then you'd have to replace it right away. And this was happening week after week after week. So Kevin and Jordan had this idea that they were going to help the police catch these vandals.
How did you feel about this?
Well, I thought it was a silly idea. I was really scared about it. I didn't know who these people were. I didn't know if they were dangerous. I didn't know if they were armed, and why they kept coming and they were targeting our neighborhood. So I really didn't want him involved. I was pretty scared about it.
How often were they coming around?
I mean, multiple times a month. They would come over the weekends, and it was throughout September and November. It was fairly frequently.
Specifically, what would they do?
They would smash our mailboxes with like a weapon or a bat or something.
What were your mailboxes made out of?
They were just like your generic metal mailboxes. They were painted white. They had the flag and they had the address on them.
What noise would the mailboxes make when they were being smashed?
It was this horrible crunching sound. It was this loud, because the mailboxes are metal, but they're also echoey. So it would just be this big echoey crushing sound.
What would you compare the noise to?
Well, so it would happen in the middle of the night. And when you hear like a bat hit that echoey metal box, it sounds like a bomb going off, or a gunshot.
And how did the noise make you feel?
It was terrifying. You would wake up in the middle of the night to the sound going off.
You said the middle of the night. At what times would these mailboxes be smashed?
Well, it would really vary. Sometimes it was 12:30, 1 a.m. Sometimes it was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
What days of the week would they target you?
Really just the weekends, Saturday and Sunday.
At what time would you usually go to bed on the weekends?
On the weekends, usually 10 or 11 o'clock. Kevin usually works the late shift, so that's usually when I go to bed. He comes to bed when he gets home.
And what time would your children go to bed on the weekends?
Well, they're young, so they would usually go to bed around 8:30, 9 o'clock on the weekend.
Would the noises wake you up?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned your husband walked into your bedroom.
Yes.
What happened after that?
Well, he comes into the bedroom and he says that he and Jordan are going to go watch the neighborhood. So I get up, I put my bathrobe on, and I go down to the living room to see what he's talking about.
And what did you do exactly when you got downstairs?
So when I got downstairs, I walked into the living room, which the windows of the living room overlook our yard, and I just watched him out of the window.
What could you see?
Not much, actually.
How was the street lighting?
Oh, the streets are always very dark. That's honestly been one of my complaints having young children, is that the neighborhood is only lit by these two street lamps that are at the entrance of the neighborhood. It's a cul-de-sac, so it's a circle. And there really aren't any other street lamps around the circle. And at that time of night, all of the houses are dark. So you can't really see anything. It's very dark.
How far are these street lights from your house?
Um, they're all the way clear across to the other side of the neighborhood.
About how many houses away are you?
Well, because it's a circle, I would say it's probably like the full length of our yard and the full length of the cul-de-sac. So maybe a good like 2 or 3 house lengths away.
Okay, so what happened next once you were downstairs?
Well, I was downstairs and it was 1 o'clock in the morning. So I sat down and I guess I just dozed off.
What do you remember next?
Well, the next thing I remember is that I heard these gunshots ring off, like I did, when the mailboxes get smashed, that same like echoey booming sound, and I just was scared awake.
Now, you said this sound, this echoey boomy sound. How many of those sounds did you hear?
I believe I heard 2. I think 2.
Now, what did you feel in that moment?
Well, in that moment, I was scared. I was terrified. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know if someone was shot. I didn't know what I was hearing.
What did you do?
Well, my husband was out there. I ran outside, out to my lawn.
And what could you see?
Well, there was a car in the Fox's front yard, which is the second house down. There was a car in the yard, and it had struck a tree. It was up against a tree. It was still smoking from the engine.
What did you do?
Well, I started walking towards it, where our driveway, at the end of our driveway, meets the cul-de-sac. I started walking down there, and then Kevin runs up to me and he stops me, and he hands me 2 pistols.
Who was Kevin?
Oh, Kevin, my husband.
How did he appear to you?
Well, he was flushed. He looked scared almost. He was talking very, very loudly and very, very fast, like if he was anxious.
You mentioned he gave you 2 pistols. What did you do next?
Well, I went through our front door and I walked through the house, and then I walked out the back door of our house onto the back patio.
And where were you going?
I was going to the boat dock, which is off our backyard into Lake Cherokee.
And what did you do when you got there?
I, I threw the two pistols into the water.
Why did you do that?
You know, I don't know. I think I was on autopilot. There was just there was just so much going on with the commotion and the car and the sound, and I just reacted.
Why was your reaction to throw them into the lake?
You know, guns are Kevin's thing. I've never really handled guns. I don't shoot guns. I just wanted them out of my hands. I just didn't feel comfortable with them, and I just reacted. I was just moving on autopilot, very robotic. I just didn't want to have them in my hands anymore.
Were the guns expensive?
Well, my husband buys nice guns. He's a collector. But in that moment, it didn't even register. I didn't even care.
Who made the decision to throw the guns in the lake?
Well, I did, but it wasn't really so much a decision as it was more of an instinct. It was just my reaction.
Just in general, when have you thrown things in the lake?
Well, this time, but other occasions also. You know, I've thrown photographs in the lake before, you know, like many people throw, you know, bottles and notes into the ocean. It's just something that I do sometimes.
Now, after the lake, what did you do after?
I went back into the house.
And who was in the house?
My husband.
What did you see him do?
Well, he was pacing back and forth. He was talking on his phone.
Um, Now, who was he talking to?
He was talking to his attorney.
Why do you think this?
He told me he was talking to his attorney, and then later his attorney showed up at the house.
What did you do before the attorney arrived?
We waited. I mean, we couldn't go to sleep with everything going on. Kevin told us he wanted us to stay in the house. He told me that we weren't to answer the phone, we weren't going to open the door, we weren't going to turn any of the lights on or off. So we
Now,
just waited.
why did you decide to do this?
That's what the attorney told us to do.
And then what did you do next?
We went upstairs to our bedroom. We waited.
Who went to the house after the incident?
Well, there was a policewoman who came to our door. She rang the doorbell. We were able to see her from the upstairs window.
How did you react to seeing the police?
Well, we stayed upstairs. We didn't answer the door.
Why?
Well, we didn't want to give any statements to the police that would harm Jordan.
Why did you think this?
Well, because Kevin told me that it would.
Now, back to the attorney. When did he arrive?
He got to the house about 30 minutes, about a half hour after the policewoman left.
Now, where did the attorney meet with you?
Oh, he didn't meet with me. He met with Kevin in the den.
At what time did the attorney leave?
Early. He left around 5 in the morning, probably about 5.
And what did you do after he left?
Well, I packed a bag and I left about an hour later, about 6 a.m. I was driving to my parents' house where my children were, which is about a 110-mile drive. So I left.
Why did you guys leave so early?
Well, we'd agreed to get breakfast with the kids, and then we were going to bring them back home.
Now, back to your neighbor, Dr. Elizar. Did you hear from him that night?
No.
How was your friendship with Dr. Elizar?
Well, now we don't have one. We
Back.
used to be good friends.
What did you guys talk about?
Oh, well, we used to be very social. We lived right next to each other. Kevin and Jordan were part of a lot of the same organizations, and we would socialize a lot. We would talk about everything, you know, kids, we'd talk about work, we'd talk about the hospital. Um, Kevin always talked about, you know, his hunting trips, and Jordan seemed really, really fixated on that. He kept asking to, you know, go with Kevin to get to learn how to use a gun and to learn how to hunt and to learn how to, you know, do everything that Kevin knew how to do with guns. So eventually even started asking me to ask Kevin on his behalf to get lessons to learn how to shoot.
How did he seem about the topic of guns?
Well, he seemed very eager to learn how to use one.
Thank you, Mrs. Todd. No further questions, Your Honor.